So we're super excited to launch this new podcast, Addressable Insights, which will be tackling really anything and everything having to do with growth in Web3 data, tools, ads, and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
And this is really our first episode to give a little bit of context about this podcast in general and kind of what we're trying to achieve, as well as maybe talk a little bit about data within this wonderful world of Web3 and how to use it in an actionable way. But before we get started, maybe a quick intro to you and me so that the audience knows who they're actually listening to. Asaf?
Yeah, I'm Asaf Nadler. I'm one of the co-founders of Addressable, a Web3 growth platform. We're allowing Web3 companies to target wallet owners using ads. Yeah, I'm really excited about this podcast.
And my name is Shamir. I recently joined Addressable as the head of ecosystem. I've been in the space for quite a while. My previous role at Algorand, I've taught at University of Michigan and Northeastern University. I've organized community events and hackathons. And at Algorand, I really started on the marketing side and then transitioned to the Algorand Foundation on the ecosystem side, really dealing with growth and the challenges within it or of generating it in Web3 on a day-to-day basis. And I have to tell the audience like this story that, so I left Algorand last year and I took a little bit of a hiatus, and Asaf and I both found ourselves volunteering in this initiative that was formed here in Israel. And as soon as I saw the product, not only did you and I hit it off on a personal note, right? But when I saw the product, I had this aha moment. I had this epiphany of this solves so many of the challenges and the gaps that I had to deal with. So we'll get a little bit into what Addressable does later, but let's really start with just data. And let's talk to our audience a little bit about the challenges within Web3 of understanding users, understanding their journey, and using that information in an actionable way. So if you want to get us started, Asaf.
Yeah, so in Web3 marketing, data plays a big role. And Web3 marketing is different, I would say, from Web2 marketing in two very specific ways. The first one is anonymity, which poses a big challenge to Web3 marketers. It's typically an industry culture in which it's a big no-no to collect emails or to collect mobile phone numbers. And still in a lot of projects, we see users connecting using their wallets, not leaving any information about them. And that makes it really difficult for marketers to understand their audiences, where they're coming from, what's their gender, what's the language that they're speaking, and based on that, how to react to users and how to acquire them, which makes a big challenge for the space in doing growth. Having said that, there is a big advantage about the space in which, as in Web2 marketing, it's very difficult to collect data as kind of regulation is stepping inside, and there's all sorts of privacy changes with cookies dying and with Apple focusing on scan, which leaves Web2 marketers in a position which is very, very difficult to collect data and trends in order to plan ahead with marketing. Web3 is at an advantage because the data of the blockchain is open. So it's possible for any company doing growth to analyze everything that takes place on the blockchain, including the audience that I'm looking to target, what are they doing on the blockchain, what are they actively buying, are some of the users of my competitors drifting away, maybe that's an opportunity for me to acquire them. Is anybody making money in this space? What are people making money for? And that's a huge opportunity with data in the space if you're able to leverage that to do marketing and to plan based on what's happening in the space.
Sure. So can you tell us maybe a little bit, or the audience a little bit, about your journey into the space, and what was it that intrigued you within Web3? Your background was initially in the IDF and then at Akamai, right, over the last few years. What was it about Web3 that really hooked you, got you hooked?
Yeah, so I was always a data geek. I was always dealing with data. I spent 10 years of my life in the Israeli Defense Force in military intelligence, doing a variety of engineering and research roles. The variety of them was focused on data sciences. And then when I completed my military service, I went ahead to work for Akamai Technologies, where I started as a data scientist. and ended up being a director of data science group managing almost 30 researchers. So you can say 17 years of doing data, mainly in the fields of cybersecurity and intelligence. The point for me of stepping into the wormhole of blockchain was when I was working on my master's and PhD. I was working with my advisor on blockchain design. So we wrote a few papers on blockchain design, both of layer one design and application and tokenomics, really from kind of a theoretical level of doing proofs on the wall and making sure our protocols are secure and incentive compatible. And I just fell in love with that. The blockchain tech was to me mm, probably the most interesting technology that I came around. I was a big believer in that, and I think that the more I was into that, writing papers about that, collaborating in the space, giving talks about that, I started seeing the inevitable connection between the cybersecurity and data, which I was doing for 17 years of my life, and the world of blockchain, which was new to me and that I kind of fell in love with, and started seeing the connection between the two of how doing data analysis for the world of blockchain can solve lots of big problems. And I think the biggest problem that we identified in the space was the problem of marketing, in which there were so many cool startups that are pioneering in the space and that are looking to kind of grow the space into the mainstream. But with anonymity and with the data on the blockchain being scattered all over, it's really difficult to get all of this data into one place and learning from that about what users are doing and what's the best way to communicate with them. And that's the problem that we set to solve in Addressable. The key problem in this space is when we were talking to startups, we were asking about how are you planning to do growth? And what we kept hearing is we have the budgets, we know who's the audience. We're thinking about that in blockchain terms. It's traders that are actively working on the blockchains, gamers that are playing or spending money on specific games, and we want to get to them, but we're not sure of how to translate this description of what people are doing on the blockchain to something you can tap into advertisement or all sorts of other user acquisition platforms. That's the problem that we tried to solve. And the way in which we decided to solve that, which turned out to be really, really effective, is connecting between wallet owners on the blockchain social profiles in social media. When we embarked on this journey, it was very clear that this is going to be effective. And the questions we had to ask ourselves is, what's the best way to do that in an ethical manner and to make this solution compliant? And the way in which we did that is one, we obviously worked with our legal team to ensure that everything is compliant and by the book. In which, if I had to say within a single sentence, what makes it this solution is that we're not revealing at any point in time who's a person behind an individual wallet. And to be frank, nobody cares who's behind that,
Right.
whether it's Asaf or Shamir. What people are looking to get are the market insights of, tell me about the audience of wallets that I'm looking to get into. How many people are these? Which countries are they roughly coming from? What else are they doing on the blockchain? How are they describing themselves? But nobody wants to know who's behind the individual, which puts us at a good spot in which we're both able to provide technology that helps the space grow very effectively, which is it's very, very important, and also maintain users' privacy.
Okay, so you have this kind of matching engine, and it has on one side social media and other profiles. On the other side, it has Web3 data, right? Blockchain transactions of all sorts. What are some example audiences that you can build with Addressable?
So the core idea was that you can take any description of, or maybe let's take a step back. So I think that over the past 2 years in Addressable, I met hundreds of founders and marketers in the space of Web3. And one of the first questions that I typically ask is, tell me more about your target audiences. What struck me is that almost everybody are describing the audiences in blockchain terms. It's the traders that are active or are dealing with specific tokens. It's the gamers, it's the NFT collectors, and so on. So what we built, using our database that maps wallet owners to social profiles, what we built is the ability to query this database based on what are these users doing on the blockchain. So you can query by people who play specific games, or people with a specific net worth, or people who are active, whether they're investing in a specific DeFi protocol or lending protocol, or whether they're developers that are deploying smart contracts on the blockchain, which is appealing to a large variety of Web3 companies whose audience is mainly active on the blockchain.
Right. So based on their on-chain behavior. Okay. And then you do that across Twitter, across a display network, and Reddit. Correct.
Exactly. So it was very, very important for us to not be yet another dashboard, right? So in the world of user acquisition, obviously it's very important to have analytics and to track everything and to understand and gain the insights. But I would say it's even more important for the data to be actionable. And for that, we really wanted an action at the end. We wanted some way for the marketer to, with a single click, ideally, leverage the insights to do something and communicate with the user. And having looked at a variety of ways to communicate, which was incredibly difficult, by the way, because communicating with wallet, there's no inherent way of doing that, or there's no standard protocol of communicating with wallet that is I would say massively adopted. So our way to solve that was using advertisement, which is still probably the standard way to mark a segment in the population and show them with specific content. And also the platforms in which we're operating, which is Twitter, Reddit, and display ads, are the places where a lot of the crypto users spend majority of their time, right? So
sure. Crypto
that's a
Twitter,
place where they spend their time, and they're accessible. So the action at the end of that, which is in our case the advertisement, that was our way of making everything actionable and assisting founders and marketers to communicate with their target audiences.
Okay. So how do you tell us a little about your perspective? I'm really curious to kind of get into your mind. How do you see marketing in this world of blockchain and Web3 evolving over the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think that the industry is still at an early stage, which on one it makes that very, very dynamic and with tons of opportunity, and it still isn't particularly clear what it would look like. But I would say the core question that would probably lead everything is what would take the industry from the size at which it is today to the mainstream, right? I always joke about that. Exactly. What's the killer app? Or I typically joke about that. What would crypto look like at the day in which my mother is using crypto? Perhaps not knowing she's using crypto, but it would be seamless enough to breach from the enthusiasts and the early adopters, for those of you readers of Crossing the Chasm, to kind of the late market, that for them, it's as simple as making peer-to-peer transactions or anything else. So at the core, what we're always trying to both predict and collaborate on with our customers is finding the way of a variety of crypto apps that we're collaborating with, of finding the way into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I guess you're kind of touching this right now, but from Addressable's perspective, tell us a little bit about how Addressable grows with Web3 over the next 5 years.
Yeah, so what we identify is there are 3 data problems that has to be solved for crypto to be at the mainstream. The first one of them is identity matching and the ability to cross between identities on the blockchain and identities in a real world in some way, so that marketing activities that are in the real world, for instance, advertisement, can be connected to everything that takes place on the blockchain.
Sure.
The second thing is the full ability to measure everything and understand what's working. If you think about the mobile world 10 years ago, when mobile apps started burgeoning into the mainstream, the same way that we hope decentralized applications would, they needed tools like mobile measurement partner and mobile analytics, which today look like a standard, but 10 years ago, they were also startups, right? In these tools assisted marketers in understanding what works, what sells. So if you try on different campaigns and you try on different channels, you're able to tell what's working and leverage this data to constantly improve. But that's another
Right.
thing that needs to be in the space and that we're working on
What, in
providing.
optimization feedback loop?
Exactly,
Is that
exactly. And even the transparency of having a weekly marketing meeting in which
right?
everybody around the table can agree on the facts, on the single source of truth of what's working, what's not working, what we need to improve for next week, for next month, for next year.
Right. Far too many marketing conversations surround around vanity metrics and process, right? In our space, right? It's like, okay, we brought this project from here to here and we did this and that. And, we got this many eyeballs, but that's not, if you're an L1, if you're an exchange, that's not growth.
Exactly, exactly. I definitely agree with that.
So I guess you talked to a lot of CMOs. We mentioned a little bit about kind of the data. What are some additional challenges do you think that are keeping CMOs and I guess growth professionals within Web3 or within the traditional marketing space looking into Web3? What are some of the things that might hold them back in terms of achieving growth? I mean, we talked about data. Is there anything else to kind of expand on that?
Yeah, so I think that looking back to 2 years ago, there wasn't a variety of tools that CMOs can adopt into the Web3
Mm,
space. So it was mainly about relying on classic Web2 marketing.
right.
It's the CRMs, it's the ad networks, it's the marketing automation tools. And I think that what a lot of marketing managers and a lot of founders found out is that some of them are applicable for Web3. For instance, Twitter, which is a Web2 platform, is still the biggest place where Web3 is happening.
Sure.
But with a lot of other tools, there just wasn't a good fit. The identifiers weren't the same identifiers, for instance, in CRMs, where you typically identify users based on their company or their email. That's an identifier that you're oftentimes lacking when you're looking at the blockchain. For instance, if you're a layer one, your company, your customer base are wallets, right? But how do you tap wallet into an existing CRM, right? That's an issue. So I think we went through an era of misfit in which for a lot of CMOs and marketing managers in the space and also founders, there was just a shortage of tools, right? And I think that this is changing. There's a new category of tools that is getting into the space and is looking to improve of that. It's built by native people from within the community of Web3 that are building these tools to improve how the space grow. And this is essential. This is how new disruptive technology is always emerging. And I think that a bit of what is holding some marketing managers and founders back is the realization that it changed. There are more marketing tools. Some of them are not as mature as what you'll find in Web 2, but this is how it evolves. So it's a lot about being willing to embrace new technologies in the Web3 space and work together with that to get better results than what you're getting when you're not working with tools.
Right. Um, okay. I'll give you one last question, and we can keep the conversation going another time. I'm sure we're going to have many more of these. Tell the audience a little bit about what gets you excited. What are you passionate about when you look at the space? What tickles you? In terms of just gets you excited. Is it the merging of AI and blockchain? Is it I don't know, regulatory certainty that's going to allow people to suddenly do new amazing things? What is it? What do you have your eye on over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think with a historic view in mind, I've been with the blockchain space, I guess, since 2016. As I started writing papers in academia and kind of looking back, it was the 2009 Bitcoin craze, right, and the 2015 with Ethereum, and then
Right.
we had
2017.
and yes, with stable coins emerging,
Right.
we had NFTs emerging, not necessarily in this order. And I think that it's been some times in which we've seen a bear market in which everybody are trying to find out like what would be the next big thing that would create another bull market. But thinking about that more broadly, this is how disruptive technology is almost always emerging. You feel that you're working on this really cool technology, and there's always the question of what will make that go into the mainstream and kind of create this huge value network in which it's becoming part of our day-to-day life, like mobile phones have, and five generation has, and AI with ChatGPT, right? And what I see is a variety of opportunities in the space that I think altogether are bringing crypto and Web3 more closer to the
Hmm.
mainstream. And to kind of name these, I see payment solutions are driven more closely to the extreme, to the mainstream. I see peer-to-peer payment going there. I see social networks that are decentralized going there with true ownership for content creation. I see the decentralization of AI with some really, really cool use cases in marketing as well. And I think that all of these together can form the necessary step to drive the Web3 market deeper into the mainstream. And I'm really, really excited about that because it's been a space in which it's so dynamic and things are so rapidly changing. And I'm really, really excited about seeing that go to the mainstream and seeing more people using that and seeing what the space looks like when we get to this point. So this is where I'm really excited about.
Yeah, no, no one knows for sure, but I read a report recently that estimates somewhere between 5 and 6 billion crypto wallets by 2030, which, when you think about it, is just around the corner. So, 6 years from now. And I think that assumption or that estimate really has to rely on some killer app, some right exponential improvement in accessibility and usability of this technology that ultimately spreads to people like our moms, right? Just like you said.
I absolutely agree on that. And I maybe to add kind of another thought to that. So with the mobile world, there was also the platforms coming up, the ability to develop mobile apps. And I keep making this analogy of decentralized apps to mobile apps, which is like 10 years apart. With mobile apps, it was also the question of what will the killer apps look like? I think that in hindsight, and if you read all this analysis of how mobile apps world grew, it was a combination between finding the utility and the killer app to having a good growth platform to analyze what's working together. And the two are somewhat complementary. It's both about the
Right.
consumers, but also about how to drive that and distribute what you're doing and analyze what's working well. So I'm
Sure.
really excited to see what the combination of the two things are looking like.
Right. So the builders need to be able to see how the market is reacting, right? And there needs to be that feedback loop. It's not just enough to have the great product if you don't have those insights.
Exactly.
Wonderful, Asaf. Thank you so much, Asaf Nadler, COO at Addressable. This is the Addressable Insights Podcast, and we have a lot of great new content coming up. We're going to be interviewing some of the best growth people in the space. I think seeing growth from various different perspectives, whether it's on the branding side, the communication side, the marketing side, the product side, we're going to be exploring all of those together. Here's to a great journey together.